work with him, get him as a colleague, and maybe in some competition he was ahead of most of us. We learn in different competitions from him, and we understand that we're still learning for the future. So this is why we schedule this video conference to try to understand all together how we can manage competitions and how we can deal with the challenges that we will have. I will not take a lot of time to introduce Mr. Chris Cohen. I will leave the floor for Chris to start directly with the lecture of today.
So we'll start by, if I can just check that everybody can see the screen.
Yes, that's fine.
That's good. So the aim of this morning's, for you this afternoon session, is threefold. We're going to look at the international officials and how their job relates to you if you're working for the local organising committee, if you're a local official. Then look at a few challenges in the second session and what the outcome of those challenges is. And then finally a short session on the work of the competition director. So the rule book says in some detail what the jobs of the international officials are. Here's the list of them. It probably will be added to over the next few months because things like the event presentation delegate will be added to this. But if we just look at the list as it stands at the moment, this is the list. And if we start with the organisational delegate, usually this is a very experienced member of World Athletics Council. In Doha, it was Jeff Gardner from the Norfolk Islands, who's a vice president of World Athletics, very experienced. And their job is all of the detail behind the championship. So it's not the technical side, it's looking after the financial situation and making sure that the organising committee can fulfil all of their requirements. As I say, not just the technical issues, but everything else as well. So requires somebody very experienced to do that. The technical delegates, usually a mixture of council members, of World Athletics staff and of ITOs, and the occasional professional, let's say, experienced expert in the field. So for track and field events, those people would come from the three lists I've just mentioned. But if it's the race walk championships, it could be a senior race walk judge, or in the cross-country championships, it could be somebody who's been on the cross-country committee. So a variety of different people, but a mixture so that there is a mixture of experience and the skills required to do the job. And there I've listed some of those responsibilities. You can see those on the screen, the events that are going to be in the competition, the qualifying standards, lots of support from the staff to do these things. So even though one of the TDs might be a member of staff, there'll be other members of staff in the background helping. So the statisticians will help with the qualifying standards. Imre, who many of you will have met, responsible for supporting the decision on the implements to be used. And then down the list, regulations, entries, seedings and draws. Anything not covered by the rules during the competition has to be decided by the technical delegates, and then obviously chairing the technical meeting at the start of the competition and at the end of it writing reports, and after each of the site visits also making reports as to what's happened. So in Doha we had Anna Riccardi, who is a council member, Luis Saladi, who's a staff member, he's the head of competition, and Yuki Oseki, who's an international official. And then in Tokyo next year, we'll have Sylvia Berlag from Holland, who's also a council member, Luis again, and Fred Nantes from Brazil, who's an ITO. And then in Oregon the following year, it'll be Anna Riccardi again, council member, myself, and Jane Edstrom, who's also an ITO. So that's the technical delegate. Medical delegate, responsible for all the medical decisions leading up to and during the competition, so making sure the facilities are adequate, not just at the competition venue, but also for the training venues, the warm-up area, and in the accommodation. obviously somewhere like Doha last year, very important that the medical delegate had a good relationship with the local medical people because of the extremes of temperature that were expected there. So lots of decisions were made leading up to the championships, particularly around the marathon, but also on the track for things like the 10,000 meters to ensure the health of the athletes taking part in the competition. And then during the competition, either the medical delegate or somebody that they decide on looks at athletes when it's necessary. So in Rule 4, there's an issue there about athletes who aren't able to compete but want to compete later in the competition. And normally, if you don't turn up, if you've been registered for an event, you have to compete, and if you don't come to that event, then you're disqualified from the rest of competition. But there is a backup to that which says that if you can produce a medical certificate, the medical delegate can look at you and decide whether he thinks or she thinks that you'll be fit for another event during the competition. So that's quite a serious role that they have. They tend to give that over to one of the local organising committee medical staff because they're obviously busy with other things some of the time. And at the other extreme, they can actually order an athlete to withdraw from competition. So if somebody who's out on the marathon course, out on the race walk, 50-kilometre race walk, is looking particularly bad and looks as if they ought to be stopping the race but don't want to, the medical delegate can order them to stop. Similarly for the anti-doping delegate, responsible for all of the issues, the facilities, and again, it's not just in the stadium, it's also at whatever other venues they have doping to be taking place, doping tests to be taking place. So there could be rooms within that hotel or one of the hotels where the athletes are staying. There could be a space at the training venue. In Doha, we had an anti-doping space within the Qatar Sports Club, which was the main training centre for the athletes. So they're responsible for all of those and also for making sure all of the local staff understand how to do their job, that there are sufficient of them, and making sure that they do carry out their duties properly during the competition. The ITOs, talk about that a little bit more later, but effectively they're the referee of every event. Sometimes if they're not on duty as a referee, they might be acting as an assistant, so they could be one of the umpires around the track edge watching, particularly difficult for things like the 4x1 relay. The local officials will all be out in the relay takeovers, but it's always helpful for them to have one or two of the ITOs supporting them. And again, their role is to make sure that the rules and the regulations of that event are followed. And again, if the technical delegate makes any decision about the way the competition is to be run, then they have to obviously carry those instructions out. International race walk judges, again, it's about walking style during the race. It's not about following the rules that the ITO, the referee, would follow. So anybody who gets pushed during a race, the race walking judge doesn't decide on that. That will be the referee, the ITO, making those decisions. But on the other hand, if one of the ITOs is watching and sees an athlete who he thinks isn't walking properly, he can't make any decision on that. It's the race walk judge who makes that decision. So very, very important, the differential between the race walk judge and the ITO out on the course. This one is fairly self-explanatory. Obviously, the road course measurer measures the course. That will happen several months before the event, and then they'll come back again before the event and make sure that nothing's changed. For example, there might be roadworks, they might have changed the route of the road. So they've got to obviously measure it just before the race as well. Important for things like the start of the race. You always find that the event presentation team put out some pots with flowers on somewhere on the course, and they don't necessarily tell everybody where they put the pots of flowers, usually at the turning points. And quite often the road course measurer will get there and find that the course is either 5 meters shorter or 10 meters longer because they put the pots of plants in the wrong places just to look nice for the cameras. So very important that they do that accurate measure just before the race starts, before anybody can, or after everybody's moved anything that might be there. international starter at all major events, major championships. There'll be an international starter. They work with the local start coordinator, so the chief starter usually is a local official, and then between them and the technical delegate, they decide who's going to start which races. So in Doha, we had a couple of experienced and good local starters, so the duties were shared between the international starter and those local starters. But last year I was TD in the European Under-18s in Sweden. Sweden effectively doesn't have any outstanding starters, so the decision was made that every risky start would be done by the international starter. So the 100 meters, the 100 hurdles, the 110 hurdles, all of those were done by the international starter. But it's important that you talk between the international starter and the local start coordinator well before the competition, so that you know whether the level at which the local starters will be working is good enough to allow them to do those risky events. Obviously the 100 meters men's final is a tough, stressful event, and you don't want somebody who's going to be too nervous and not be able to do it properly. The other thing about the starters, obviously, is that they take every race from their event. So if you're doing the 100 meters, you do the preliminary round, the first round, the semi-final, and the final, and the same for every other track race that you're responsible for. The International Fed of Finish Judge effectively is responsible for the results for all of the track events, so deciding the times. Depending on the company that you're working with, sometimes the International Fed of Finish Judge and the local Fed of Finish Judge will be watching the timing company member of staff who is doing the actual placing of the cursor, and they're agreeing where that cursor goes. With other suppliers, the International Fed of Finish Judge does every race and actually places the cursor on the screen. So it varies depending on the company that's working. But they have to time every athlete and then confirm the result with the results company. And that's why they need a good relationship with the other officials who are working. Again, we'll talk about that later on. And then finally on the list here, the jury of appeal. Usually for World Athletics events, it's a mixture of council members and 2 ITOs. The council members do it in rotation, and I think we've got about 30 council members. So in a 10-day competition, the expectation would be that 3 of them would be on duty every day. So they would usually get only 1 or 2 days of duty, and the 2 ITOs are on duty all of the time. I remember what happened in Rio, because I was secretary to the jury, and in fact, I think we probably only used about 15 or 16 council members as jury members, because they were the ones who were most interested in the rules, most interested in the competition, and they would swap with council members who weren't terribly interested, who basically wanted to just watch the competition, or let's say go into the lounge to watch the competition. Normally there's a panel of 5, and as long as there are at least 3, and one hopes an odd number, then they're there to make all of the decisions based on the rules of competition. So everything that comes to them. As an example, in Rio, so I was secretary to the jury, but I finished up sitting on the jury on a number of occasions. I well remember the race walk. We had an incident where a Canadian and a Japanese athlete came together about 200 meters before the finish. And the jury was myself, George Salcedo, who many of you will know, and Alberto Juantorena, the famous Cuban middle-distance sprinter, 200, 400 runner. Alberto clearly had no idea about the rules of competition and relied completely on George and I to explain to him what we'd seen on the video and what had happened. Alberto sat throughout the entire discussion that we were having, putting his autograph on little photographs of himself, and at the end of it he'd signed about 3 dozen of them, and George and I were the first recipients of these autographed photographs. So he obviously took his duties very, very seriously. So who's actually in charge of a competition? It depends to some extent on the structure of the LOC. In London, our main management team for the competition itself were technical officials. So we sort of carried on from being the competition staff into being the competition director and the meeting manager and the technical director. Whereas in Portland in 2016, as an example, none of the management team were technical officials. And so the competition director was a completely different person. The technical officials were obviously completely different people. So it depends on how the structure goes as to what job people do and what their knowledge is, and the knowledge of the local national officials and their attainment as to what responsibility is taken and what the structure will be. So as an example, in Doha, the senior management staff locally were probably less experienced than they had been in London, which was part of the reason why the IAAF, as they were then, asked me to join the competition staff as a competition director. So it's very important that you make sure you've got that level of knowledge and that level of skill. When you're looking at how you work your officials on the field, have you got any World Athletics ITOs on the panel? Have you got any area ITOs on the panel? And one of the things that happened in Doha is that we brought in some regional ITOs, let's say from the region of Doha and from a little further adrift, to actually come in as national officials and to support the local team. So that was very useful. Relationships really important. So very important to have good local knowledge. So if there's somebody in the LOC who knows the ITOs or knows the technical delegates, that's really useful. Similarly, if the World Athletics staff know anybody from the local organising committee, that's really useful, because what you want to do before the competition is build a level of respect and a level of confidence that what you're going to do will actually work. So the more knowledge you've got of the local people and the more knowledge they've got of you, the better it will be, so that you can make sure that you leave people to do their job. You monitor how they do it, but you don't have to do it for them. So it's really useful to have that knowledge. And then looking at the different types of official that we've got, the way they work. Obviously, the technical delegates are the final decision makers, but minute to minute, the decisions will be made by the competition director. There'll obviously be occasions when something has to change, and the competition director is the only person who can do that, because they have good communication systems to all of those other people you can see on the screen, and also to the volunteer chiefs who are out on the field of play. So it's very important. If I look at how we did it for the Asian Championships last year in Doha compared to the World Championships, the communication system for the Asian Championships was almost non-existent. We effectively had one channel for everybody on the field of play, which made it very difficult, because you obviously wanted to speak to one person, but two other people were already talking to one another. So you had to wait until they'd finished. And no matter how urgent your conversation was, you had to wait until the other people had finished. Added to that, there was a radio system from the event presentation team to the competition director, but it only worked if you were facing one another and no more than about 150 meters apart. So communication is really important. Compare that to the World Championships, where I think we had in total 8 channels, and it meant that the competition director could target any conversation with the people he needed to speak without having anybody else interfere. But it's also meant that other people could have their conversations without the competition director interfering in their conversations. So really important that you have a good communication system. How many ITOs will we have? That obviously varies on the level of competition. For the Olympic Games, World Championships, there are 10. For the Indoor Champs, 5, and for the World Relays, 3. Often there aren't enough ITOs to be referee of every single event. So it's important that you cover the most important of those roles at any one time. If you don't have enough, and in Doha we didn't have enough ITOs to cover every event, you then talk to the local officials, and again that's why it's important to know somebody in the local organising committee, to ask who is there in the local organising committee who is competent to take up one of the refereeing positions. What often happens is that you don't have enough to provide the call room referee, you don't have enough to provide the combined events referee, So again, it's useful to have a good, or more than one good, local technical official who will take up one of those roles and look after that during the competition. And obviously they become one of the group of officials along with the ITOs, because they need to get the same briefings from the chief ITO that everybody else is getting. So it's important that you use the best local officials to fill those gaps. So in terms of the roles that are important, track referee needs to be track referee for the whole of the competition. It's not a job that you can switch around, because there has to be consistency right throughout the championship. And then a local official will act as their chief judge. And it's important that it's a good local official. And again, we were fortunate, I think, in Doha that we had one or two really good local track judges, because if the track referee has to leave the track, then that chief judge has to take over during the competition as the track referee. Track referee might be called out to go to look at the video, to talk to a team leader anytime during the competition. So it's important that a local official can take over that role. Start referee should be the same person right throughout. Again, consistency is very important. So it's important that the same person works alongside the start team throughout the competition. There's obviously the international starter there, but they won't be starting every race. So it's important that there's a good team there working together. Video referee, again, needs to be the same video referee throughout, because it's quite a difficult skill. One of the things World Athletics are looking at the moment is to actually train a group of people to be video referees from the pool of ITOs, so that there is a smaller pool and they more regularly get the role of video referee, rather than necessarily having to choose from a panel who might have no experience of that job. And again, one or two local judges who work with the video referee and effectively are also video referees with the international official, because it's impossible to look at maybe 15 different TV screens at the same time for one person. If there are field events happening as well as track events, they can't be watching both of them at the same time. So it's important that there are some local judges who are experienced and competent to be able to do that job as well. Field event referees, it depends how many field events in one session as to how many of those you need. But again, you have to have consistency, so the same person will be referee of one of the qualifying groups and of the final, rather than having different people doing the qualifying groups and then the final. I mentioned the core room referee and the combined events referee. More than likely they will be local officials who are given those roles. The combined events referee is really much more of a management role, because there will be ITOs refereeing each of the individual events, but somebody who has overall responsibility for the whole event and is the referee when the athletes are in the combined events rest area, when they're arriving back for their events. So somebody who is overall responsible for the event and can make those discipline decisions if it's necessary to make any during the competition. So those things I've mentioned already about consistency, about relationships between different groups. Important that the track referee is able to work well with his local judges if they don't speak the same language. It's very important that the chief judge can speak English, because the track referee, all of the ITOs have to be able to speak English. So the chief judge needs to be able to speak English so that they can translate then the messages that come from the umpires and the chief umpires. So the track referee is aware of all the decisions the track umpires have made. Same on the start. Very useful for one of the people at the start area to speak English. It doesn't have to be the start coordinator, it can be just an interpreter. There's somebody there who can quickly translate between the starters assistants, and the start referee and the international starter if something happens that needs to be judged on. And then similarly with the video referee, important that at least one of the people in the video room speaks English to be able to talk with the video referee. And again, it doesn't have to be one of the video judges. It could be an interpreter who works with them. In the field events, similarly, the field referee will be in charge, but there is a team of maybe up to 10 judges working with them. So again, very useful for at least one person there to be able to speak English, so that again, if problems arise, they can help to solve those problems. And it could be a judge or it could be an interpreter. The vast majority of athletes in the field events at World Championships, at the Olympic Games, will speak English. So usually the language problem for the athletes isn't an issue, but it might be between the judges and the referee. In the core room, the likelihood is that the referee will be a local judge, so the language is less important, but it is important that there's good relationships between the officials in there. The manager is a separate person from the referee. The manager who manages the process, gets the athletes through the core room, make sure they follow the times. But the referee is there to decide if something goes wrong, if somebody misbehaves, to make sure that there is a separate person handling that from the officials. Quite often the referee can sit in the corner of the core room with a good book and hopefully not be disturbed for the whole of the competition, but he has to be aware of what's happening around him. And quite often there'll be more than one core room, so he has to be aware of what's happening in both of the core rooms that are in use, or more than two core rooms. In Doha, we had a gathering space in the warm-up track. We had another one at the throws field. So although the referee doesn't have to be in all of those places, he needs to have communications from those places to know whether anything is happening there that needs a decision to be made. And again, useful to have somebody who speaks English, an interpreter or one of the officials, to help work with the athletes who are coming through. And again, we've mentioned combined events referee. Always useful again to have an interpreter in the combined events restroom to ensure that the athletes are aware of everything that's happening. I can see Arsene sitting there watching this presentation. There he is sitting in the waiting area next door to the jury room. I don't know how big your screen is, whether you can see that, but this is how good the relationships have to be. Competition director taking the photo, secretary to the jury, the TIC manager, the track referee, the video referee, and the international photo finish judge, all sitting there at 3 minutes to 3 in the morning because the jury is still sitting. So it's important for them to wait for results because they might be needed to give evidence. And then, of course, the chief photo finish, the international photo finish judge, is responsible for making sure whatever decision they make is referred back to the results company, so that if they change the result, the results company have that piece of information as quickly as possible. Clearly at 3 o'clock in the morning, there won't be anybody from the results company rushing to get that result, and none of the teams will still be sitting waiting for it, but it's important that it's published as quickly as possible, so that the team do know it as soon as they wake up in the morning and can make any reaction to that they need. So relationships between local officials and international officials, very important, because they do have to work together for maybe 20 hours a day in some cases, and it can be very long days. So that's the end of the first part of the session. Soren, if you want to explain what we're doing next. Do you want to unmute?
Okay. We have a few minutes more, so if we have 5 minutes more on this session. So if you want to shoot any questions in the meantime, but just to update you, as soon as this session will finish, you will have to reconnect on the same link for the next session, and we will go like this. We would also want you request you to give us your email address and your names, because we will be issuing a participation certificates to you. So please do send that. We're thinking about the chat, but probably we can see how we can do that afterwards. We will give you an email address whereby you can send that afterwards. So if you have any questions or you want to intervene now for the next 5 minutes, because we have this time before going to the next session, the floor is yours. Okay. So
if you've got any questions, type them into the chat box, or yeah.
So what I'll do, Chris, I'll end this session now, And please don't send it in the chat now, because it will erase. I need to get it at the last session. So your emails, you send your emails afterwards. I'll give you the email address. You can send me afterwards, because then we'll be able to send you your certificates. So in a nutshell, Chris, just before we continue, how was your experience of Doha? I mean, it was kind of, we had the impression it was very lively. It was a big spectacle. But your impression there about, as an international, as the competition director, and your relationship with the international officials, give us a bit the feel of that for the next few minutes before we can go to the next session.
Okay. I think I started out as a bit of an outsider, because obviously I had met several of the senior officials beforehand and some of the senior staff, because I was originally going to be the technical delegate. And then when the decision was made, when I was asked if I would help as the competition director, then obviously I had to work more closely with the local officials. I felt that certainly amongst the senior officials and the senior staff who were working, I think I was received well, so I enjoyed working with them. I don't think I ever felt any hostility that I came in from the outside, so I enjoyed working with a group of people who were there. There was a huge mixture of experience, from some people who'd been involved from the Asian Games 10 years ago, the World Indoor Championships, so some very experienced officials, the Diamond League that they've had every year for 10 years. And then at the other end, coaches from local teams who were coming into athletics, not exactly for the first time because they'd helped at other events, but were very new to that level of competition. But I think when we got to the competition, everybody stepped up and did a fantastic job. I mean, I was very proud of the job that our guys did. There was obviously criticism in the first couple of days of the crowds not being very big. But obviously in competition, you can't do anything about that. You can't exactly go out and drag people off the streets. Not that there are too many people on the streets because it's too hot. But in terms of the competition, the officials, the local staff, what we've called volunteers, so the people who did the hurdles squads, the equipment, all of those things, did an amazing job and produced what I think was technically one of the best world championships that World Athletics has had. Because the level of the athletics was incredibly high. There was some superb athletics performed by the athletes. And so there was a lot of fear beforehand from a lot of people about the temperatures, about the problems they would create, about what other people saw as the low level of athletics in Qatar, and therefore the low level of officiating. But I have to say I was incredibly proud of the team who put on the competition and who made a very good competition for the athletes to be part of. Certainly the conversations I had with athletes and team leaders, both there and the ones that I've seen afterwards at other competitions, no criticism at all from anybody about the way the event was officiated. So, very happy with the competition as it was. So, for me, it was a great experience. It was a long experience. I was away from home for a long time, but I say I was made to feel very welcome in the competition staff, so that was very good. Just seen a quick questions come in from Irina Gerasimova. What were the main challenges in terms of communication at the championships? If I hold that back until the last session, because I think we're running out of time, I'll hold that back. I'll scribble that down on my note paper. So I'll give you an answer to that, Irina, in a while.
Okay, so it's going to cut now. As soon as it cuts, we give time just to reconnect to the next session, which is on the same link. Okay, so
this is far too clever for me.
Okay, it's done now. It's back to you. Here you go. Now you are the boss. Enfin, you're always the boss.
I wish. Okay, so this second part is about looking at some situations that have actually occurred and looking at the outcomes to those challenges. So what sort of challenges can we have? Well, there are various sorts that you meet in major competition. Obviously technical challenges, and here we had a problem with a hammer hanging up in the hammer cage, and trying to work out what the solution is as quickly as possible. Quite often to have problems, similar problems with the pole vault equipment. Ceremonies, quite often ceremonies are an issue, not just victory ceremonies like the one here in Doha, but often victory ceremonies are actually on the track side, sometimes on the grass, so they have to cross the track. Opening ceremonies, always an issue in terms of competition, because again, I think back to the Asian Championships in Doha, and you're told that the opening ceremony will take 20 minutes, and 45 minutes later it's still happening. So things like that are always a bit of an issue. Technology problems sometimes can be an issue, so it can be anything as simple as the EDM machine running out of battery power, with the photo finish going down, all sorts of issues there. Event presentation can be a challenge, because again, you build into the program that it's going to take 90 seconds to introduce all of the athletes, and then suddenly you've got 5 more athletes in the final of the men's pole vault, so it takes an extra 40 seconds. So those sorts of things can be a challenge to the competition. And then obviously television can also be a delay. It can be something as simple as the fact that they're a little bit late coming to you for technical reasons. More often than not, it's the commentators who are too busy talking, having a conversation about something that's nothing to do with the competition that's going on. But until they stop talking, you can't start the race that you're due to start, because the cameras won't be on you or on the athletes. They'll be on the commentators. The biggest challenge, obviously, is the athletes. If athletes didn't come to athletics competitions, they'd be so much easier to run. There'd be far fewer problems. But again, throughout those challenges, important to have good relationships and good communications, because quite often you have to make quick decisions, and it has to be the right person who makes that decision. So it's very important that the communication system works for all of those people to make those decisions. So we're going to look at 1 or 2 challenges that I've been involved in over the last few years. Here we've got the 200 metres semi-final at the Commonwealth Games in Gold Coast in 2018. This is the official video referee's view of the race. It's the semi-final, and we're looking at an athlete called Jobadwana from South Africa, who was disqualified. But if we start the video sequence, you can see how useful it is to have video evidence. So there, you may not have spotted it, but it's much clearer from the head-on position. Unfortunately, I don't have sound with this video, but it's quite clear that the gun hasn't gone off when Jobadwana starts. So he was given a false start. He was disqualified from the race. His team protested. They went to appeal. Their claim was that his blocks had slipped, and therefore that's why he'd fallen out of the blocks. But the video you look at can clearly show that there was early movement. His hands did leave the ground before the gun went off. And you can also see very clearly that his blocks didn't slip. One of the very useful things that Seiko have got now is the ability to look at different views from the starter's position. So the starter has a little TV screen next to his position with these 3 things showing. So there's an overhead camera behind the athletes, there's a camera on the ground just inside lane 1, and there's also the graphic there showing the reactions of the athletes at the start of the race. So here we can see effectively a picture of that. But if we start the race, you can actually see what happens in real time and the starter's able to have a quick look at that immediately after he's decided that it's a false start or has started the race. You can actually see the camera, the head-on camera in front of the Seiko sign, and you can see the overhead camera above the TDK sign. You can see the green cursor moving along on the right-hand picture. And there you can see the movement by lane 3. The gun goes off. And then the reaction from each of the athletes. A false start was given for that race. Interestingly, if you actually look at the graphic on the right-hand side, it could be you could decide that in fact it shouldn't have been a false start, it should have been a yellow card. But in fact, the starter, having looked at all that evidence, still decided that it should be a false start. Here again, back to the Commonwealth Games in 2018. This is the women's 4x100 meter final. And one of the good things about video evidence is that you can actually look at the video now. You can play it backwards and forwards. You can stop it. You can slow it down. And so you can see that in this particular piece of video. You can see that happening. So it becomes quite clear there in the slow motion picture. And here the video referee is about to stop the picture. Every incident that happens, the video referee and the technicians there will make a log of it so that they can identify very quickly everywhere that they see something go wrong, so that if there is a protest, they can go immediately back to the picture, show it to the team leader, the coach, to prove that the decision that was made was the right decision. So there you can see that the picture's been stopped exactly at the moment on which the Australian athlete is stepping on the line. So it gives you that ability to look at those things again. Back to Doha, this is the men's steeplechase. I think this is the semi-final, if I remember rightly. And again, different views can help. So looking at it from the front and the back can always help. We're looking for the athlete called Nigate from Ethiopia. So you can pick him out there in yellow and green right in the middle of the picture. And interesting to see the judge there who's watching immediately goes to his radio because he's seen something, but he wants confirmation from the video referee that they've seen the same thing he's seen. So he radios through to his chief, and the referee then asks the video referee to look at that incident to see whether somebody brought down Nigate. And you can see quite clearly that Nigate just stumbled and fell into the barrier. So very clear, very useful having the ability to do things during the race, because there the video referee was able to check it immediately, log where it had happened, which lap it was on, made the decision straight away that there would be no disqualification because it was an accident. So everything is noted, and that decision was made before the race finished. Race result goes out. Even if there's a protest, you know that the decision has been made. You look at the video, you can show it to the team leader, but it saves a lot of time having to go back and try and find the right piece of video. So it's very important that that is available. Here's a copy of the video referee's log. This is day 5, and you can actually see, here it is, you can see that men's 3000 steeplechase, round 1, heat 3. In fact, it's the bottom one there. Nigate trips leading into the water jump, hits the barrier. This caused the Indian athlete to take evasive action and need to stop and climb over the barrier. Interestingly, I haven't shown that piece of video, but if you look at the log incident above that, which happened a few seconds earlier, the Ethiopian tripped on the heel of the American, fell on the ground, causing another athlete and the Indian to fall, the Finnish athlete to take evasive action and have one step inside the track, which was allowed because it was part of that incident. The other athlete ended inside the track but continued the race. So the decision was no action, racing incident. Track referee and the video referee both agreed that. There was a protest, came from India. And again, you go back then to the bottom one, the incident at the water jump. Again, the Indians lodged their protest, and the track referee then decided that because the Indian athlete had been so close to qualifying and had been involved in 2 separate incidents with the same Ethiopian athlete, then the referee advanced him to the final. So always important that those logs are kept and they can look at those incidents very quickly. And obviously the jury of appeal could, if it was taken that far. It didn't need to go to appeal because India were happy that their athlete had been progressed to the final. Next one we're going to look at, in fact, is also on the same day, the same session a little bit earlier, and it's the Danish athlete Peterson. So if we're looking at her in lane 2. And again, it shows the usefulness of the ability to slow down the picture, to repeat it, to play it backwards. So the video referee had seen something, the track umpire had seen something, so they looked at the video again and Peterson was disqualified. So really useful to be able to play that back several times. One of the other useful things for the video referee is to have more than one screen available to them at the same time in the same place. So here we've got an example, the women's 800 meter semi-final. And you can actually see 4 different views all on the screen at the same time, all in real time. So you're watching the same thing from different angles and you're able to make decisions based on that. And then when you choose the angle you like best, you can then bring that up and show that full screen to have a better view of it. So the athlete we're looking at is Nakai from Uganda. So you can see the incident quite clearly. So the track referee and the video referee both get together to look, and they decide that maybe this is the best view to look at the incident. Jamaica were protesting, that's the athlete Gould at the front there, because they said that Nakai pushed their athlete out of the way. So they did lodge a protest. The track referee and the video referee decided that there wasn't sufficient contact there to disqualify Nakai. And as the Jamaican athlete actually qualified for the final, so they didn't bother appealing. They were happy that she went into the final. They probably weren't happy that Nakai also went to the final, but they didn't make an appeal because they felt that they would probably lose it, having been turned down by both the track referee and the video referee. What was quite interesting was that in the final, the same athlete was protested in the final for pushing the same athlete. 2 of them got involved again. I think it was on the back straight in a push. But again, the same decision was made that it wasn't sufficient pushing, that it was just a racing incident, and so the athlete wasn't disqualified for it. Here we go a little bit further back in time. This is 2012, the London Olympics. This is the women's 4x400 meter relay. And we're looking at the athletes lining up. And oh dear. So again, you can see very clearly what happened. The Nigerian athlete was put into position because her incoming athlete was in, I think, 8th place as they went past the 200 meter mark. ran harder than anybody else coming around the bend and into the straight. So the outgoing athlete decided that she didn't like being so far out and moved inside. So obviously Nigeria were then disqualified. In field events, again, the ability to watch something again, very important, very useful to be able to do that immediately. So here we've got the judge sitting watching from one side, the camera on the other side. The chief judge for this event is sitting right next to the camera, so is getting the reaction of the judge opposite. So the message immediately is when something goes wrong to check the video, to report back to the referee, and then to tell the athlete what decision has been made from the video. We talked about communication before. What's really useful, and again, look at this next time, look at the judge opposite, look at his hands. So very important communications. So the athlete touches the top of the stop board. The judge opposite, who's watching, doesn't wave his arms about or shout anything. He just turns his hands over and shows the chief judge a little red card. So the chief judge knows that he's saying that was a no throw. Chief judge obviously can see the same thing from his side. And then the judge is pointing to the right-hand side to say his right foot touched the top of the stop board. Immediately the chief judge, because the athlete obviously protested about it, said he didn't know what he'd done wrong. So the chief judge radioed straight through to the video referee, who was able to look at the picture and then radio back and say, yeah, absolutely clear, he did touch the top of the stop board, which would allow probably any further protest to be stopped. It would stop the waste of time, because if that had been Walsh's best throw and it hadn't been allowed, obviously he would have then had to go into the fourth round in the competition, maybe not deserving to be there. So it saves all of that fuss about not being allowed to carry on in the competition because the decision is already made. Obviously they can appeal that decision, but there is a lot of confidence that the right decision has already been made. So much better than not being sure whether the right decision was made by the judge. Another good thing about the field now is that you've got more than one camera quite often. So here we can see the javelin. This is a Kenyan athlete, Yego. So you can see from the front and from the side. So you get a much better view of whether that was a foul or not. Opposite, you can see the chief judge, and behind him the referee, the ITO. And there again, you saw the referee immediately radio through to the video room and say, can you tell us whether that was a foul or not a foul, please? Because we think it was just about okay. Yego went on to the final and sadly had 3 no throws, 3 fouls in the final. But again, useful to have different views for the field events. Again, Doha, the decathlon. This is Mayor of France in the discus. And again, when you're watching, watch the reaction of the referee, who's the guy with the yellow armband. So watch that. And again, different views available. Mayor obviously is protesting because he doesn't know why he's got the red flag. So from that angle, you can't see it terribly well, what's happening with the yellow flag, but you can see there the foot. And again, the ability to do in slow motion, to stop, to play it backwards and forwards, gives you the best possible opportunity to see what actually happened. So here's another shot from the side. Red flag goes up immediately, and again you can see the referee immediately on the radio to the video referee to say, can you look at it please? And he's saying to the athlete, we're dealing with it, leave the circle please, move on. The decision will come from the video referee in a few seconds time. That throw was given as a foul. As you saw, he protested. The protest was rejected, and in fact Mayer then dropped out of the competition with his injury, so he didn't continue the competition, despite having been expected to win. Back to the Commonwealth Games. This is the men's long jump, McMullen of Northern Ireland. And again, different views give you different things to see. So the red flag's gone up. Athlete comes to have a look. Athlete isn't making a protest. Now we've got the other view, so that if there had been a protest, we've got the possibility of seeing the static camera that sits by the takeoff board, and there it is. And they're difficult to see, but you can see the little notch appear in the plasticine board as the athlete goes through. Again, very important always to measure, regardless of whether there's a close no jump or not, because you never know what decision the jury will make. Always keep the evidence. So with that plasticine board, had the athlete protested, very important to carefully take out the plasticine board, keep it on one side, maybe put a stick-it on it, a little note on it to say, you know, this is the second jump of McMullen, Northern Ireland. And if the jury need to see that, they have that evidence available to show them where the nick in the plasticine was. Another South African, this one, an interesting one again. It gives you the value of different views, so that if it did come to a protest, the referee and the jury have clear evidence of what happened. This is during the period when athletes were only allowed 30 seconds for their trial. But again, if you look at this, you can see there is very clear evidence, not from the first view, but from later on. So you can see the clock, you can see the yellow flag went up. Athletes walk back completely unaware, thinks that she's going to carry on. Time has run out. And then she realizes what's happening. And then a different view will show you she's just received the javelin. You've got your stopwatch running, you can be timing it yourselves, but there is an even better view coming up.
Non, c'est français.
So here's the better view is just coming up now. So now you can see the clock is at 30 seconds, hasn't started yet. The athlete already has a javelin, is walking out, everything's ready, so the cone is lifted, and now the clock starts. See the clock's running down. There are no delays. The volunteers who are walking have stopped, so they're not holding the athlete up. It's past 15 seconds, yellow flag's gone up.
Sorry, Chris. Chris, please. Can you please unmute everybody? Can you try to mute everybody?
So there you can see a very good view that showed the whole of that 30 seconds, the reason why you had the red flag go up.
Capaz.
If we move on to another one, this actually isn't a TV or a video referee picture. This is just one I took at the Diamond League meeting in Doha last year. The rule was changed, if you recall, about athletes being able to take their foot outside the rim and touch the top of the rim if it was on the first rotation. But because it's a very new rule, I think it's very difficult for judges who weren't aware of the difficulty of seeing whether the foot rests on the rim or not. So here you can see, make a decision for yourself. So clearly the foot does go onto the rim, but the question is whether it actually rests on the rim. So if you weren't quite sure that time, have another look. So I'm sure you'll agree it's a very difficult decision to make. And it's one that I think officials need a little bit more help with, because it is so difficult to decide whether there was any extra push from that rest on the top of the rim. If you can see the yellow lines on the screen, I'm sorry about that. I'm not quite sure what they are. I don't know where they've come from. But here we've got, again, Doha, but this time the World Championships, and another shot putter. And again, if you look, the same issue. So that time, fairly clear that there is no rest on the top of the rim. Judge is looking as well at the stop board to see if there was contact on the top of the stop board. And again, the ability to play that back, to look whether there was a contact with the top of the stop board or not. So even with video evidence, it's not always absolutely clear cut, as you can see from there with the stop board at the front, and with the previous one with the rest on the rim at the back. I know one of the things that World Athletics are looking at is actually putting in 2 cameras, one on each side, so that there's a much better view. And particularly in the shot put, it's difficult if you're sitting on one side to see what happens in the shadow of the stop board on your side of the circle. So what's the paperwork that goes with all of these challenges? Well, here on the left-hand side, we've got a racing incident form. So the judge, the umpire around the track, obviously has to react quickly with his radio. There might be 3 umpires plus a chief umpire at each bend, at each area of the track. One of the umpires signals to the chief radios through to the chief judge, who tells the referee tells the video referee to look, and also tells the photo finish chief that there's a disqualification, possibly. But at the same time, the umpire who saw it then has to write down on his piece of paper what he saw. So again, there is evidence, not just inside at the video with the log, but also outside with the umpire who fills in his form, and then make sure that that gets to the track referee as quickly as possible, so that if the team do lodge a protest or make an appeal, there is some written evidence as to when it happened, where it happened, as well as the video and the video log that we looked at earlier. The right-hand side, the appeal to the jury form. So if the team have protested and the protest's been turned down, or if the protest's been accepted, a different team then may want to appeal. And there's the appeal form, which fills in the reason for the appeal. And then the jury have to write out why they decided either to accept the appeal or not to accept the appeal, and whether to keep the $100 or to pay back the $100. Here again, this was a great piece of paper kept by Arsene, who's sitting here listening to us this afternoon. This is the log of all of the protests that came in during, this is over the period of the 4th, 5th and 6th of October. So this is just one page out of the log. Every protest that was made by the team, whether the protest was rejected by the referee or whether it was accepted by the referee. So everything recorded so that the team knows what's happened, the office knows what's happened, World Athletics knows what's happened, and they can keep a very good record of everything along the way. From the appeals, the same thing. Again, a very good record of everything that happened. This is through from the 27th at the start of the championships right through to the 6th of October, all of the appeals that were held. And again, it's just that one page. So you can see that in a few places the appeal was upheld. At the top of the page, we've got Jakob Ingebrigtsen. Some of you might remember the bit of pushing and shoving that went on during that race. That went as far as the jury of appeal. And the jury upheld the protest made by Norway. One or two weren't considered because the team decided that they wouldn't go ahead with the protest or for other reasons. And then, as I say, some were accepted, some were rejected. Interesting one there from Spain, number 17 and number 19. Their first appeal was rejected, but then more evidence was brought to the jury, which is allowed, and they then looked at that new evidence and then accepted the protest, the appeal. Again, you may remember that that was the one where where two of the athletes were both given a bronze medal, Ortega being one of those two athletes. And finally, this is what an appeal form looks like when it's been filled in. Remember, we had that incident in the hurdles we looked at a few minutes ago with Peterson of Denmark. So there's they made a protest, the referee turned it down. Their protest, we appealed the DQ in the women's 400 metre hurdles, heat 3, lane 2. Video taken from the side does not show a clear evidence of the trail leg violation, hidden behind the pole vault mattress and taken from look at the back side. We want her reinstated into the semi-final tomorrow. And obviously when you looked at the video, you saw the videos, they weren't hidden behind the pole vault. It was very clear from the videos that you saw. The jury of appeal gave their reasoning there. The jury reviewed the video of the hurdles 6 and 7 and concurs with the referee's judgment that the athlete did not clear hurdles 6 and 7. The appeal is therefore disallowed and the result is as published stands. So that's what the appeal actually looks like. So again, that's where I'm going to stop. Move on to section 3 in a moment, and again I'll hand back over to you, please, Soren.
Okay, so same process. We, as soon as it cuts, we reconnect on the same link, and we'll start with the final session. So for your email, your name and countries and email address, you need to send that to the email address which has been put up by Okri, and we'll give that again before then. So see you in a few seconds. Okay, Chris, you are the host, so we can start. You need to unmute yourself. Unmute your. Okay, that's good.
Are you recording? Is that
Yeah, it's
sorted?
okay.
Yeah.
Good.
Okay. Thank you. Okay, hopefully you can see that. Okay, so the final part of the session, a little bit shorter so that there's a bit of time for questions and comments about the competition director and the team around the competition director. Remember that you know the team of officials you've got, the team of people in the stadium isn't just around the organising committee. There are lots of other people as well. So here we've got a bunch of real down and outs who were the officials for the 2017 World Championships. These are the technical officials, around 200 of them. There are also the volunteers, and I think at any one time there could have been up to 200 of those working. Here we've got one group, the hurdle squad, setting out hurdles during the competition. The event presentation team, so making sure that all of the pictures on the screens, the things that are being shown to the crowd, the things that are being said to the crowd, are all linked to what's happening in the competition, with the competition director sitting next to the event presentation team there, so that communication is very good. There's the television team, very important, because obviously I remember one comment that was made to me during the European Championships in Zurich when we were complaining about something TV were doing. The television director said, if we weren't here, you wouldn't be able to run any competitions. So very important to keep them happy, but they still have to do what's necessary to make it work. Service providers, here we've got the company who work for European Athletics doing the timing and scoring. So this is a group of that team doing the zero control with the start coordinator there and the international starter, along with the team from the service providers. Obviously, there's also the VDM team, the video distance measurement, the EDM. There's the results team. There are lots of people concerned. And the ones that you'll probably most often meet at a World Athletics competition will be Seiko, and then at the Olympic Games, Omega, and Diamond League meetings is also Omega. So as well as them, the ceremonies team. I think in London we were quite fortunate that they were outside the track and therefore didn't really get in the way of competition. They could get people ready for ceremonies without having to stop what was happening on the track. So, but ceremonies have to be taken into account in everything that the competition director does. The video room, not just the referees, but also the technicians to keep all of these things working properly. So they're part of your team. The photographers, who quite often will be getting in the way at the end of a field event, might delay the start of a track event because of things like this happening. This is the, I think this is the indoor championships. The 3 pole vaulters just finished their competition. Everybody's favourite member of the team, the mascot. Mascots sometimes are very stationary. They just walk very slowly around the edge of the track. Sometimes they move a lot. Here we've got the mascot from London 2017 who moved far too much. Here he is with one of his notices. He had lots of these notices that he carried around at various times. But he also did lots of active things. So as an example, during the competition, every morning his minder, his boss, would come to me and say, look, these are the things we want to do. Can we do them? So as competition director, I had to say, well, yes, you can do something in the long jump pit because we don't have anything on the back straight in the long jump area for 2 hours. So you can do something in the long jump pit for the first 2 hours before anything happens there, just to keep the crowd there happy. So, of course, what does he do? He takes off the cover of the long jump pit. He picks up a couple of kids who are sitting on the front rows, brings them over the boards and sits them in the long jump pit, and they start building sandcastles. Similarly, one day they asked if they could use the high jump facility, which we weren't using during that session. So during that session, he set up the high jump stands, put his washing line between them, and put all of his clothes on the washing line hanging between the high jump stands. So lots of funny things happening, but always have to be kept under control, because the worst thing that could possibly happen, obviously, is the mascot crossing the track and being run over by 10 5,000-meter runners who are going past at that moment. So very important that the mascot is part of your team. All of those people need to be kept, let's say, under control to some extent. I wouldn't necessarily say that the international technical officials have to be kept under control, but occasionally there is need for good communication between them. But the team does have to have a leader, and the competition director effectively is that leader, because they have to know what everybody's doing and they have to control what everybody's doing. Some simple examples, it might be that during the track events during the competition, you're watching both the track events and the long jump, for example, and you want to make sure that the last 5 or 6 jumps of the 6th round of the long jump happen when nothing else is happening on the track. And the judges maybe are moving a little bit too quickly, so they're going to get there while the 5,000-meter race is still happening. So as the competition director, your job is to say to the referee at the long jump, I need you to slow down. So in Doha, we had 1 or 2 incidents, 1 or 2 occasions when I actually said to the field referee, I'm going to give you instructions when the cone is lifted for the next athlete. So I will actually tell you when the next athlete can jump, to actually physically control every single jump, to make sure that it's slowed down enough to make sure that those last few jumps were happening in a stadium with nothing else happening on the track, so that all of the crowd could watch just those long jumpers jumping for their gold medal. Occasionally the opposite will happen. I'll look at the timetable, I'll look at the shot put, and they're going too slowly. So I'll say to them, you need to move faster. Move in and out of the circle much more quickly. The problem that sometimes comes is that television will say we need to have 2 replays after every single throw or jump. So you have to make sure that you allow for the time for those replays. At the European Indoor Championships in Birmingham, we had a situation where we got 2 high jumps happening at the same time at opposite ends of the field, and also I think we had some track events going on, and I had to be in constant contact with the television director so that we made sure that we finished the high jump at the right time, but also that they got their slow motion replays. So again, I was talking to the referees of the 2 high jumps and the TV director and the event presentation director, and effectively I was directing what was going to happen every second of those competitions to make sure that the crowd weren't watching both high jumpers at the same time. One jumped and then another jumped, and that they finished quickly enough that the track was able to carry on, and that the television got what they needed out of their pictures. So very important that all of those people do what the competition director tells them to do. For the track, there's a pattern to it. So I might be on the radio to the call room manager to say, where are the 400-meter runners? Can we make sure that they're out in the next 30 seconds? They come out, they go to the start. I'm then talking to the chief starter's assistant to say the presentation will take place of the athletes at their starting blocks in 2.5 minutes time. Make sure that the athletes are back standing behind their starting blocks in 2.5 minutes time. They're back, they're presented, they're ready for the start. Competition director then radios to the start referee to say, now you can start the race. The introductions are finished, the music will die down, now start the race. So he then tells the starter to start the race goes on. If something happens, the start referee then will radio to the International Photo Finish judge on a channel that I can hear and say, I'm disqualifying such and such an athlete for a false start, or such and such an athlete has a yellow card for moving before the start. So communications there across to different people, but also I can hear them as well, and I'll tell you a little bit about communications in a second. So the race is starting, the judges are watching, the umpires around the track, they're communicating to the chief umpire then radios the chief judge, who tells the track referee what's happened, that maybe they want to disqualify somebody, maybe they want to ask the video referee to look at something, so there's communication between the video referee and the track referee. Then the track referee and the video referee tell the photo finish judge whether there's a disqualification, whether the race is okay, that nothing's gone wrong. Photo finish judge then tells the results company what the result is. So all of those things are happening throughout, and the communication between all of those groups has to be very good. Similarly, in the field, so I might be talking to the technical director to say, you've forgotten to put something out on the field at a particular event. Will it be ready in time for the competition? Talking to the call room manager again to say, are the long jumpers ready to go out? Then talking to the field referee to say, presentations in 7 minutes time, in 5 minutes time, in 3 minutes time. Presentation's been changed. It will now be 2 minutes later because television have decided they wanted a bit later. So that conversation always going on. Then now you can start the competition, lift the cone up to start the competition so that they start exactly on time. Really important, both for track and field. You can be forgiven almost if you start 30 seconds or a minute late. As competition director, I have been shouted at several times for starting 30 seconds late for an event, even though there were reasons why it was 30 seconds late. But you must never, ever, ever start an event early. It's the biggest possible crime you can commit, is starting an event early, because television won't be ready for it. For example, if the race is due to start at 3 minutes past 6, the reason will probably be because most of the countries of the world have their news at 6 o'clock and won't be coming back to you until 2 or 3 minutes past 6. So if you were to start that race at 2 minutes past 6, they're still reading the news or the weather forecast, and so that would be disaster. They'd miss maybe their only gold medal of the Olympic Games. So absolutely vital you never start early. So again, communication between the field referee and the video referee. Can you look at that for me to check? We've given a no throw, a no jump, but we want you to check it, please. And then finally, at the end of the competition, the result is passed to the results company, done electronically, so the field referee makes sure that a button gets pressed on the console at the field event to make sure that the result is passed on to the results company. The video referee might also have to pass a message on if there's been a yellow card or something else that's been given to make sure that that gets recorded. So communications, I've mentioned it several times. So here we've got the communications panel that I've looked at for Tokyo for next year, because I'm competition director again. And you can see that there are a number of columns there. They're the different channels, 8 channels for technical officials, and then a couple of channels for the presentation team that are linked to competition. The competition director has a panel with every channel on it. So I have to be able to listen to and to speak to everybody who's on any of those channels. Quite often I won't have all those channels switched on. I don't necessarily need to hear the technical manager on channel 4 talking to his team of officials who are moving equipment around, unless I need to tell him that he's forgotten to do something or he needs to make sure something happens. But I won't be listening to their conversations. I don't need to listen to channel 7 unless I need to send them a message. That's the channel that deals with the video distance measurement. So that channel will be a judge who's at the field event, might be the one who's leveling the sand in the long jump, and another judge will have a radio actually at the VDM room. So that's to give the message to say, we've got the picture, now you can level the sand. Similarly, in the shot put, a radio between the two areas. And that might increase as World Athletics increase the number of events which have video distance measurement, because you've got to make sure that nothing changes on the field until you're sure you've got the pictures, the video that you want, which shows the distance. So I won't be listening to that channel unless there's something, again, that I particularly want to say to them. As well as my channel, my radio, which has everything on it, there's also another panel for the video referee. My panel will have headphones because I don't want to hear anybody around me or any noise that the crowd are making. The video referee, because they're inside a room, they can have just a loudspeaker and 1 or 2 microphones, so that the referee himself or herself or one of the other judges there can actually send a message, but they can all hear the message that comes through on different radios. So they can have that ability from different radios. Each of the channels then is important. So for Tokyo, we'll have channel 1 for general officials. All of that will be in Japanese. So although I'll be on that channel, I don't necessarily have to listen to it unless, again, I need to tell somebody something that I know speaks English. But that's for all of the discussions that take place to make sure everything is ready for competition, that officials are given messages during the competition. The second one is for the ITOs, so that's in English. That's the one that I'll be working on a lot. So the field referees, each of the events happening, will have their own radio channel. Omega, because they're the suppliers, the technical suppliers. If something goes wrong, we need to get hold of them quickly. So one of their technicians will have a radio so that we can say to that technician, we need somebody at the triple jump, the computer's not working. So that they can get somebody there quickly. The start team, channel 3, again, it's really important that nobody else is on that channel, because that's the one in which I say to the start referee, now start the race. So it's important that I don't have to wait for somebody else to finish their discussion before I can tell the start referee to start the race, because again, we don't want to start the race late. Also on that channel is the International Photo Finish judge, because if something goes wrong at the start referee tells the International Photo Finish judge. Video referee also on that channel, so that the start referee can ask the video referee to look at something on the video screen. So important that all of those are a separate channel. I mentioned channel 4, that's for the equipment team to sort things out. Channel 5 is the track referee. So that's the finish of a race or during a race. And again, I need to hear from the track referee, and the photo finish judge needs to hear from the track referee and from the video referee that everything in the race was good. There's nothing, no problem with the race, so the photo finish judge can declare the result as a final result. Or alternatively, at during the race or at the end of the race, the track referee can say to the International Photo Finish judge, hold the result for whatever reason. Or they can say, the result won't be the final result because I'm disqualifying the athlete in lane 7 under rule, whatever rule it is that they're disqualifying under. The same thing can happen from the video referee. The video referee can say to the International Photo Finish judge, we're going to disqualify an athlete for breaking one particular rule. It also allows the track referee and the video referee to have a discussion. So the track referee can be out on the field and can radio to the video referee and say, we think this has happened in the 400-meter hurdles, but we want you to look at it again. The video referee can say, we've seen something on the video, please come and have a look at it. So then the track referee can go to the video room and have a quick look at what happened. And then the decision can be made. One of the things I like to hear is that at the end of a race, within 10 seconds of the end of a race, I hear the track referee tell the International Photo Finish judge either the race is clear or hold the result of the race. What I don't want is no conversation at all, because I don't know then if the track referee's radio has stopped working or he's gone to sleep, or whether something else has happened. After that, I want to hear the video referee say to the photo finish judge, either the race is clear or hold the result. Again, I don't want nothing, because I need to know immediately after the race whether there's a problem or if there isn't a problem. If there's a problem, it's fine. It can take them 5 minutes to sort it out, but at least we know that we can't release the result because there's an issue. So the photo finish judge has to wait then for them to decide what the result will be. But if they don't say anything and the photo finish judge releases the result, and then suddenly they say 10 minutes later, oh, hang on a minute, there was a problem, we forgot to tell you. Obviously, that creates a huge problem for the teams. It can create a problem for the results company if, for example, it happens in the semi-final of the 100 meters, because the final's only 90 minutes or so later. So it's absolutely important that we know what's happening, even if it does create a bit of a delay. The next channel, channel 6, again, will be in the local language, so that'll be in Japanese, and that's for the assistant track referee, chief judge, and each of the umpires' team leaders. So they're saying to one another what they've seen out on the track. Assistant track referee relays that to the track referee who's standing next to them. They might be the same person as the chief judge. It might be there's only one person who's doing those two jobs. But the track referee then radios on his channel, her channel, to the video referee, to the photo finish judge. So they're on separate channels so that there's conversation happening throughout the race. We mentioned channel 7. Then channel 8 is really the channel used by the international officials, the senior officials, so the technical delegates. So, for example, in Birmingham for the World Indoor Championships a couple of years ago, we had a problem with snow. We had lots of snow, and I got a message to say that the Canadian team might be late getting their athletes to a particular race. So I then immediately radioed the technical delegates to say, there's a problem with the Canadians. They might not arrive in time for the start of the race. Can you make a decision what you're going to do about it? Are you going to delay the race? Because the Canadians were stuck in the snow. Transport wasn't moving people from the hotel to the venue. Luckily, the athletes walked from the hotel through the snow. I suppose being Canadians, they're used to snow drifts, so it wasn't too bad for them. But we didn't have a delay, but at least there is a communication system that I can tell the technical delegates that there might be a problem in the future, and they can discuss that problem and come to a solution. Similarly, Secretary to the Jury of Appeal needs to be aware of anything that's happening on the track. So as competition director, I know everything that's happening. I can tell them to be ready at the TIC to go down to receive a protest or an appeal, because I've had a message to say that the Mauritius team leader is in the TIC, jumping up and down and shouting about a problem that's happened during an event. So the secretary can immediately go down to the jury room. Usually the jury won't have radios, they'll have telephones, so the secretary to the jury can telephone them to ask them to gather at the video room or the jury room. But at least the secretary is on the radio channels so that they can be involved in everything that's happening. And then the other two channels are really for the event presentation team to talk to me and me to talk to them about what's happening. So I can tell them we need to delay something. They can tell me that television are late and we need to delay something. So obviously all of that correspondence, all of that coordination is really important. And a thought to leave you with, it is all about the team. Competition director might be the focus of that team, but there is no I in team. It's important that everybody works together. So that's the end of that part of the presentation. Soren, are you going to look at any questions that might come in on the chat box so that we can decide if we've got any questions to answer or if there's anything else we need to do?
Okay, let's take the questions. First of all, thank you, Chris, for a brilliant presentation. I think, as usual, you have been able to share your experience with with much verve and conciseness for people to understand. So we have a few queries here, a few questions. So there is one question from Abdul Nasser. I understand well you recommend to measure all field events in case of protest or appeal. Is there a hard and fast rule for that, or is it just a recommendation to be on the safe side?
It's a very strong recommendation that if there is any possibility at all that there will be a protest, clearly if the athlete just runs through the board, you wouldn't bother to measure. But if it looks as though there's a possibility that they might protest, immediately go and measure. In the long throws, you can't tell whether an athlete might protest. You might have 30 meters to run to get to the point where the implement landed. Every time you should go to that point, put the spike in and be ready, and then wait for the message from the circle or from the run-up to say, we don't need to measure it, you can go away. But at least be there ready with the spike in the ground. For the shot put the same. If you're using video measurement, it's easy on the shot because every single throw will be measured, because the judge will measure everything and obviously see whether a foul was given or not. For the long and triple jump, more difficult because you're obviously very close to what's happening. But again, it's very important that it gets measured from the video. If it's being measured by EDM, again, the judge at the field needs to go in with the spike and then wait. And then they'll get a message to say, we are measuring it, we're not measuring it. But every single time, if you think there's any possibility, if it's not very, very clear, then you should go in.
That's very clear. Now we have a question for the incident regarding the javelin with the South African girl. Oscar says that he was not able to understand why the throw was not given, was red flag. I think it was the clock that ran down 30 seconds.
Yes, and I say that the last view that you had of that, the fourth or fifth TV picture that you had, showed very clearly the clock at 30 seconds. The athlete collected the javelin. The official waited for the signal that everything was ready in the field. The cone was lifted, and then the clock started. So it was very clear from that view that the 30 seconds had all been used up. Obviously, that rule's changed again now. It's back to 60 seconds, but still, that video view shows very clearly what happened and why the decision was made.
Yeah. There's a question here which says, at what moment does the 30-second, now the 1 minute start? At what moment is there a hard and fast rule as to where you launch the clock?
Basically, you look around to make sure everything is ready. So in the high jump, make sure the bar is ready. Make sure the officials are all ready. In the pole vault, the same. Make sure that the bar is up, the stands are in the right place. So again, it's communication between people. But they don't need to shout. In fact, if you're in the Olympic Stadium with 60, 80,000 people, they won't hear you shout anyway. So signals are a good thing. But when you know that everything is ready, that's when the clock starts. The athlete should know when it's their turn, particularly at top level competitions. I think Seiko still have their next athlete indicator. So the next athlete knows it's their turn even while the previous athlete is competing. So if the athlete has forgotten it's their turn or they're not concentrating, obviously you need to tell them, but it might be the clock's already started when you tell them, because if they're not concentrating or they're not in the obvious place to see them, it's their fault. You shouldn't go chasing after the athlete to tell them before you start the clock. The clock has to start when you're ready, when all the facilities are ready, when everything's ready to start the competition.
And one last question. The video referee is something which is very interesting, but it's kind of new for countries. I mean, like our audience here, which is Africa and Middle East. So how do we come and ensure the fairness of the competitions when the video referee is not in use?
I mean, one of the things that we do in Britain is that for track events, we tend to insist that 2 umpires have to have seen the incident so that we're absolutely sure that it did happen. Again, if it's absolutely clear and 1 umpire saw it, the athlete took 4 steps inside the lane line, that's fairly clear cut. But if it's maybe 1 foot on the line, then it really needs enough people to have seen it to be able to defend the decision you've made. For field events, again, you will normally have one person or more than one person who sees the incident. There'll be some evidence in the long or triple jump because you've got the plasticine board. I think one of the issues which will happen next year, and I think the likelihood is, the new long jump rule where the plasticine board isn't needed anymore. If the decision is made at your competition that you're not using a plasticine board, then I think that the expectation will be you have a video camera there to look at the takeoff board. And that could be a very simple thing. I mean, it could even be if somebody's clever enough, they can build a little stand for their mobile phone to video the takeoff and then to show it to the athlete to show the evidence that it was a no jump immediately afterwards. That probably won't come in now until after the Olympics, because the whole reason for it coming in November this year was that it would be after the Olympics. But my understanding is the IOC will expect the same rules for the Olympics as there would have been this year. So that rule might not come in for another year now, having expected it this year. But yeah, I think you've got officials there. You have to believe what they tell you. But it's always good if there's more than one of them who actually sees the incident and is able to report on it. Not always possible, but it sort of gives more importance to the decision if two people see it rather than just one.
So there's one question, and it will be the final one. Does the organization can take any video evidence from anybody to use as evidence, or just official one?
There's obviously, for bigger competitions, there's official video, but teams will bring their own video as well. Often it's completely inconclusive. It doesn't show what you want to see anyway, but you have to be open to the teams or to the athletes bringing their own piece of video and for you to look at it. I've had a number of occasions where I remember one particular competition where a team coach came and said, I've got my camera, which was, this sort of size, the size of your hand. I've been looking at the pictures in there and it's absolutely clear my athlete didn't tread on the line. You can see it really clearly from this picture. And of course the screen on his video camera was the size of your thumbnail, but he'd seen it very clearly that he hadn't stepped on the line. So the answer was very easy. Well, give me the memory stick, we'll put it into the computer that we've got for the results system, and we'll have a look at it on the screen. And of course, you put it onto the screen, the TV screen, 50-inch screen, and it becomes very clear then that, yes, he did step on the line, but you couldn't see it from your video. But you accept the video because you're showing them that you're being honest and open with the team who are complaining, protesting, and therefore you're giving them the opportunity to show you what they've got, even if it doesn't show what they think it shows. So yeah, any video is acceptable.
Thank you, Chris. Just a reminder for all our friends who are here, next week we will be having a video conference with Janet Nixon, and she will be demystifying the photo finish for us. So we'll be sending the invitations in the days to come. You are all invited to join in next Saturday at the same time for this very interesting session with Janet Nixon for demystifying photo finish. So now I leave the mic to Okri for the vote of thanks.
Thank you, Suren. I want to tell you that we asked that you send your email address to us. I'm going to share with you again the address, our email address. Just sent. Then please send your email address, your name and your country to this email address. Chris, as always, very good presentation. Thank you. Thank you, Chris. It was a great opportunity to see very long time friend, John Mason, John Blackburn, Innocencio, Janet Nixon. I don't know, but we were about 58. Very, very, very good. I would like to thank you all for participating in this presentation, but in particular, Chris. Many thanks, Chris. Firstly, for your availability to put your experience at our disposal whenever you are asked, but also for the quality of this and the richness of this presentation this afternoon. Thank you, Chris. We are going to plan a new presentation next Saturday. Suren just talked about that with Janet Nixon on photo finish. We will be very happy to have all of you again on this session. And on behalf of my two partners, Suren and Abdel Nasser, I would like to say very good weekend to everybody and see you very soon. Bye-bye.
So thank you,
Thank you very
Bye.
much.
Thank you, Chris.
Thanks,
Bye.
Soren.
Thank you,
Good
Soren.
to see everybody.
Thank you, Abdel Nasser.
it was
Thank
very
you very
interesting.
much.
Bye, Desensio. Bye, Walid. Karim.
Allez, oui.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Bye.
See you all next week, huh?
Hey.